Can't really explain it, I'm so then I have on my way. Rapsody's new album Eve has finally surfaced, and after her Grammy-nominated LAILA'S WISDOM, stacked with tracks with soulful singing from Anderson .Paak and barring us up to death on tracks like You Should Know, I didn't expect anything less than the second coming of Christ on this new album Eve. The first thing you'll notice in this album are the very strong and blatant references to powerful black noteworthy women in the industry, whether it's music, movies, poetry, modeling, sports, and hosting. The immediate album that popped into my mind was Jamila Woods with her Legacy album. It explores a similar topic and gives a soulful voice to black power and black femininity and acceptance of a passing of the torch. But if Legacy was an album filled with the various ways that you could be proud to live as a black human, Eve is filled with a sense of acknowledgement, admiration, and duty. Like these women that she's referencing, she's absorbing power from, each track expanding the person that she is through the lens of these other people. And I say duty because of tracks like Sojourner with J. Cole, a title that references women's rights activist Sojourner Truth, who freed herself from slavery in the early 1800s. Now she does far more than that. She even frees her son from captivity from a white man in court. But I find the interesting thing about Sojourner Truth's story as it pertains to J. Cole's verse is how Sojourner Truth was born into slavery, and the first thing that J. Cole says with his verse is born into pain. For him, he's never technically experienced slavery. His shackles weren't literal, but they were figurative. And he uses that connection of coming into the world with some type of trauma to chain himself to Sojourner. The responsibility Cole puts on himself here is not just to inform his audience, but also not to forget, even if he doesn't experience the exact same thing as his predecessor. He reconnects himself to her again by way of lines like, enough for me to see, cause at the time I knew my name, but I didn't know myself, so I dealt with shit the same, as a fugitive, but running from the truth and shit. Sojourner as a slave wouldn't have known her own name, but definitely at the time had developed a strong sense of self. Even without, she mapped out a plan, and escaping from slavery would make her a fugitive, like J. Cole is saying about himself in his verse. The differences here are, I think Cole is trying to say how amazing of a woman Sojourner would have had to be to develop a sense of her identity without a name, to develop a plan and carry that plan out with everything going on around her. Rapsody's entire verse, from her math bars to learning from the rap game to her duty to it, is insane. Or take the track IBTIHAJ, referencing the first black Muslim American fencer. On this track, Jazzy talks about his responsibility as an MC to the rap game, to the younger generation, his want to inform, and he's also accepting the new way to move because he knows that he's no longer in his hot period in hip hop, but he's always a necessary voice. D'Angelo on this track makes it feel more vintage, like ages it in a way. The sound is definitely much more refined and cleaned up than the Liquid Swords intro, and this track is also a testament to Rapsody's skill as a rapper, because she's able to go toe-to-toe with Jizza and be the highlight of the track lyrically, even though he's still on it. The track MYRLIE talks about widows following police brutality. Mereba's desperation is definitely felt through the hook with lines like "Don't take my love away." And again, Rapsody is destroying this album. Her opening verse starts off with her detailing her lack of confidence in the judicial system, her lack of confidence in any kind of justice, when fires in California garner more attention than race-based killings, the anxiety that a widow would have to go through raising a child in the same world that made her one in the first place, and how Rapsody ultimately, despite her position, isn't above this scenario happening to herself since she plans to marry a black man. Again, she seems to gather strength and preparation from detailing these stories. She doesn't just seem to be blindly paying homage to people, but allowing their stories to provoke further gender and ethnic based awakenings within herself. Despite all the hardship that's talked about throughout this album, I still like how Rapsody never comes across as bitter. She never sounds depressed or passive aggressive. She never sounds preachy or condescending. Despite everything that's going around, she still always seems aware and high spirited. On the track IMAN, Sir absolutely kills the hook. And it's pointless at a certain point to keep going over Rapsody's bars because they just keep coming. I mean, listen to this shit, man. It's ridiculous. Black don't crack, my age trapped where your spine is. Backwards. Black been dope before trappers. Down to the roots before Sicily was acting. What is this? Like, why are we... At this point, I don't need another rap album this year. This track is all about loving black beauty, from international beauty like IMAN to more local, more accessible beauty that she could find in her own kitchen like she sees in her mother, valuing things as simple as the texture of your hair. And I do think J.I.D has a cool verse on this track, though I do think he's mixed a little awkwardly. I don't know if there's just some thing wrong with his voice. Maybe he lost it, or there's just this slight echo to him. And the strings on this track are absolutely everything, which makes me value the relationship between Ninth Wonder and Rapsody so much more because of his way of using old R&B and soul and jazz. Because of his usage of samples like that, mixing them with the modern era, people like Rapsody, whose value lie primarily within their lyrics, have a cloud to carry contemplative or ambitious rapping. Whoopi features a funky, groovy instrumental foundation, and a lot of that could probably be attributed to the sample Watermelon Man. The flute on this track is absolutely infectious behind her voice, and on this track she essentially just talks her shit, which represents Whoopi's unfiltered commentary on many subjects. Like I said, she doesn't just pay homage to these other people she's referencing, she lives through them and sees herself in all of them. While you can say a track like Whoopi is about Whoopi because of the way Whoopi talks about anything, Rapsody is saying that I'm similar in this. Another thing I've got to give her credit for is just how perfectly she walks the line of humility and confidence, never allowing her own ego to overtake who she's paying homage to, but rapping their strengths as if they were her own. It makes you appreciate the woman she's rapping about and herself as a rapper, as opposed to just herself as a rapper. Even on the track SERENA, where she talks about the pride of being a black woman despite the obstacles and needing them to overall become a better navigator in the world, she effortlessly is weaving double entendres into this, like watchers, they watch us in my DM like sinus, but eyes, they watch eyes, sinus, like come on, are you following me? Cleo represents Rapsody's hardships trying to make it as a female MC, how saying despite how she's probably better than most of the people that I've seen in people's recent top 50, she's still not given that respect or taken as seriously, or she wasn't earlier on. And honestly, I think Cleo is the perfect character's point of view to write from as well, because whether or not you took Cleo seriously, the fact is she was a threat. She was dangerous. Even in her final scenes, she died headstrong and loyal to her team and her own ideals. AALIYAH explores similar territory in being a successful female act without having to overly sexualize oneself. Strangely, this track features Sabrina Claudio as the vocal sample, and I thought it was a bit odd given Sabrina's past opinions of black women. I'm not one to throw old tweets out there, you know, boom, but you know, I just think based off what she said, she might not be the best fit for an album paying homage to strong black women. I don't know though. But hey, if Rapsody's open to forgiving her, I am too. Final track is titled AFENI, likely not only because of her own accomplishments, which completely stand on their own, but also because she gave birth to what many people think is the best hip-hop artist ever, Tupac. How women should be valued and how only a black man without self-hate can see that. And I do like on this track that we see many different sides of Tupac, because yes, he is the same man who's uplifted women in his music, but he's also the same man that's used them as accessories and torn them down, something that Rapsody's been critical of the rap game for in the past. I like that she's using him as a reference but doesn't eliminate him from criticism. It's not just a blind reference to Pac being a great MC, it's love and critique as well. And there are many moments on this project where Rapsody comes across like Jay-Z, her vocal inflection and her cadence, possibly the way she uses her delivery, almost like Lauryn Hill at times too. But despite everything that's going on great with this project, there are a couple of downsides. One being the track TYRA. Now I like this track, but I think it's a significantly weaker track sonically and lyrically than IMAN, but it discusses pretty much the same thing. Yes, even the Bjork sample isn't enough to bring this track back. It still talks about black beauty, but in a less powerful way in my opinion. Some of the hooks on this album are extremely bland or completely lifeless, devoid of any real rhythm. Michelle, for instance, which does reference Michelle Obama, seems to be one of those tracks that's supposed to invoke this get ready for the party kind of vibe from the lyrics, but the production sets the stage for a Lucille or a Ruth or a Gladys, not a Keisha and Aisha or a Felicia. It sounds way too fucking old, like the Golden Girls getting ready to go out. Even with tracks that are written as beautifully as Oprah, with a smooth ass bass line and a feature from the Kelly 47 that reminds me of a young Tink, and electronic sound effects constantly popping in and out of the background that feel like someone's constantly putting their fingers all over a plasma ball. With all that going for it, the hook is still dry and flat. And honestly, many of the instrumentals here don't have the same impact that the ones off LAILA'S Wisdom did. I can say to its benefit that having more minimalist production sets the stage for a more intimate session with the rapper, but I can't say they always work to the benefit of having multiple aspects of a track that you enjoy outside of just Rapsody herself. All in all, I really enjoyed this album, and I do like the references to black power and black importance, and just expanding the type of person you are through all these different people that you admire, seeing a little bit of yourself in every one of them and being able to write yourself somewhat in their perspective or in their shoes without making it seem like you are as great or better than they were. Simply saying how you all share the same experience despite some of you never meeting or ever encountering each other. Which is why for this album, in my opinion, the representation of Eve isn't necessarily to say that we are the most important because we are the first woman. I think it's to say that we all are Eve. She's living through all these different people and expanding the type of person she is through them. Eve isn't necessarily just one person. Eve is all of them, at least from what I'm getting off this project. I do enjoy this project from an analytical perspective, from a culturally important perspective, and even from a conceptual perspective. There are funny, witty, comedic, and braggadocious bars in here, just like there were on her last project. And in all honesty, I think her writing's gotten even stronger now that she has a concept to stay consistent with. That being said, I'm gonna give Rapsody with Eve. Dope project, definitely a recommendation. Definitely check it out if you have not already. And I'll see y'all next time, man. Let me know how you felt about this album in the comment section. And I'm out. All right. Peace. Bye. Get the